I get you're scrolling through a dozen drone bundles, wondering if any of them are actually worth the cash and if you won't end up with a pricey paperweight. You don't want to splurge on a fancy-looking kit only to find it's a nightmare to get decent footage or that the battery life never lives up to the hype. That hesitation is real, especially when a product promises 8K 360 capture and a full set of accessories in one box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So, let's break down the Antigravity A1 Infinity bundle the way a hobbyist would when they're trying to decide whether this is the drone that finally lets them pull off that immersive video they've been dreaming about. I've looked at the specs, read through the handful of reviews that are out there, and spent some time thinking about how the pieces actually fit together in a typical weekend shoot. First off, the biggest draw here is the promise of 8K 360 video. For most casual flyers, that's a marketing buzzword that sounds impressive but rarely translates into practical benefits. The reality is you need a fairly powerful editing workflow to make use of that resolution, plus a decent amount of storage, hence the 64GB card that comes in the bundle. If you're already comfortable handling raw 8K footage, or you're planning to use the drone for professional VR content, the extra resolution can give you flexibility to reframe shots after the fact without losing quality. On the flip side, if you're just looking to capture scenic flyovers for YouTube, you'll probably spend more time rendering than watching the footage, and a 4K export will look just as sharp on most screens. The bundle also includes FPV vision goggles and a grip motion controller, which is where the Infinity claim tries to set itself apart. The goggles give you that first-person view you see in movies, letting you line up shots by literally looking through the drone's eyes. In practice, the experience is decent for short bursts, the latency is low enough that you can react to obstacles in real time, and the field of view feels immersive enough to make you feel like you're actually up there. The motion controller, however, has a learning curve. It's not a traditional remote with sticks, you tilt your hand to steer. If you've never used a controller like that, you'll need at least a half hour of practice just to hover without wobbling. For seasoned FPV pilots, the controller can feel a bit underpowered compared to dedicated racing sticks, but it does let you experiment with a more intuitive motion-based approach. Battery life is another critical piece of the puzzle. The bundle ships with 3 high-capacity cells, which is generous compared to many entry-level drones that only give you a single 20-minute flight per charge. In real-world use, those batteries push the flight time up to roughly 25 minutes in calm conditions, but that number drops quickly once you start using the 360 camera at full resolution or engage the obstacle avoidance system. I've seen users report that you can get 2 decent runs before the batteries start feeling noticeably lighter. The upside is you don't have to scramble for a charger after every flight, you can swap cells and keep the session going for about an hour total. The downside is the extra weight those larger cells add to the drone's overall mass, which can make it a bit sluggish when you try to change direction quickly. Portability is a genuine selling point. At 249 grams and a foldable frame, the A1 Infinity fits into a small backpack along with the goggles, controller, and landing pad. That means you can pack it for a weekend hike, a beach day, or a city rooftop without lugging a bulky case. The downside is that the folding mechanism, while convenient, introduces a tiny amount of play in the arms. In windy conditions, the drone can wobble a bit more than a solid frame model, which is something to keep in mind if you plan to fly in breezy coastal spots. Now, let's talk about obstacle avoidance. The A1 Infinity advertises a basic sensor suite that can detect objects in front of the drone and trigger a stop or a gentle turn. In tests, the system works reliably for large, solid obstacles like a fence or a tree trunk, but it struggles with thin wires or foliage. If you're flying in a densely wooded park, you'll still need to keep a vigilant eye on the screen or goggles. The system is helpful for beginners who might otherwise crash into a wall, but it's not a substitute for manual piloting skill. So who should actually consider buying this bundle? If you're an enthusiast who wants to dip your toes into immersive 360 content without buying a separate camera and drone, the A1 Infinity gives you an all-in-one solution. The inclusion of goggles, controller, 3 batteries, a high-capacity microSD, and a landing pad removes a lot of the guesswork about what accessories you'll need. It's also a good fit for creators who already have a decent editing rig and